welcome back to Spittin Sports with Lamar. I am Casey Lamar, and I'm coming at you from the 256. This video, college football recap for this past weekend, this past Saturday. Top 25 teams as normal, so let's just go ahead and get started. Last Thursday, you had the Miami Hurricanes at home taking on the North Carolina Tar Heels. Easy game. North Carolina's really bad. Miami, they got the job done. They're back on the right track after getting embarrassed by LSU opening weekend. 4-1. They're having some quarterback issues. Rozier didn't play in the game against North Carolina, but no issues for Miami. They won 47-10 very, very easily. Saturday, you had number 1 Alabama taking on Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. You already know what happened. Alabama scored 49 points in the first half. They were up 49-0 at halftime. Tua, 8 for 8, 128, 2 touchdowns. Still hasn't taken a snap in the fourth quarter this year. Jalen Waddle, he really had a huge game for the Tide. He had two receiving touchdowns on 3 catches for 138 yards, and he also had a punt return touchdown. Really big game. Really big game for Jalen Waddle. Alabama cruises as expected, 56-14. They were outscored in the second half, but they basically had the water boys in at that point. Not actual water boys, but the third string. I mean, it was over with. Bama was trying some new people that obviously don't get a lot of playing time yet, so they gave up 14 in the second half. But Bama 56-14. The next one, you had number 2 Georgia taking on Tennessee. Tennessee's really bad. That's about all you can say about that. Georgia really cruised. It was 17-0 at the half. The final ended up being 38-12. Georgia, they've got quite the slate of games coming up here soon. They got Vandy at home. Vandy, I don't think Vandy's necessarily pushover, even though they almost lost to Tennessee State. But then they have to go to LSU. They have Florida. They have Kentucky, and they have Auburn. So they're about to hit a huge stretch. They're about to play 4 teams in the top 25 in a row. 3 of those in the top 15. You got LSU at 5, Florida at 22, Kentucky at 13, Auburn at 8. But Georgia, they've got one more with Vandy, and then they are in a stretch that is nobody else can say they have, really. Georgia's getting ready to really go. We're really about to see how good Georgia is this season. 3 games against top 25 opponents, or 4 games against top 25 opponents in a row after this upcoming weekend. But Georgia, easy win over Tennessee, 38-12. The next game, Clemson and Syracuse. I'll be honest, Clemson should have lost this football game. Even with Trevor Lawrence in the game, they were struggling, and then he got knocked out, obviously. And they had to go to Chase Bryce, or to Bryce. Excuse me if I got his first name wrong. To Bryce. And they ended up winning, but they ran the same play, especially on that winning drive. They ran the same play 15 times in a row. Read option. And Syracuse didn't stop at one time. There was one stretch where they had a 4th down and Clemson had to throw to get the first down, and they got it. But they were in that same play, and Clemson just couldn't stop it. I mean, Syracuse just couldn't stop it. Excuse me. Syracuse should have been back-to-back wins for Syracuse over Clemson. Kelly Bryant, he could have had his job right back if he would have stayed, but that's a whole nother story. But Clemson, they have these games every year. 2 years ago against NC State misses a practice field goal that would have won the game. They miss it from less than 30 yards away, and ultimately Clemson won that game. But it's every year you have one of these games. Everybody has one of these games, but it's, Clemson, they found a way to win the game. They ended up winning 27-23, but Syracuse had that game, and they found a way to lose it. The next one was the game of the weekend, and it lived up to it. Ohio State, Penn State. Penn State was up. It ended up being 13-7 at halftime. Penn State should have had 20 or more points, honestly, at halftime. And then Penn State went up by 12 with less than 8 minutes left in the game. It was 26-14. And Ohio State pulled an Ohio State and found a way to win the football game. Penn State should have won that game pretty easily. Ohio State, they just fought with it, stayed in it. Less than 8 minutes left, they scored 2 touchdowns and win the game 27-26. Trace McSorley killed Ohio State. That final play call, I mean, I'm not criticizing. I don't know what was that. I don't. I'm just saying. 4th and 5, and they run a read option. Take the ball out of the guy's hands that had been killing Ohio State all night long. Just get him out in the bootleg, get him out somewhere, get him outside the pocket to either throw or run. But instead, they run a read option on 4th and 5, and that's the ball game. Um, Ohio State was just standing there waiting on it, but they fought back. Dwayne Haskins, he finally didn't look unbeatable. He was 22 of 39. He might have had more incompletions in that game than he's had all season to this point. 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Penn State was all over him. And then the final 8 minutes of that game, it just all fell apart for Penn State. And Ohio State pulled that game out 27 to 26. Penn State should have won that game. That's another one they let slip away. Ohio State, they took advantage, got the win. LSU, Ole Miss, LSU, they won by a lot more than I thought they would. LSU looks really good. 45 to 16. I know it's just Ole Miss, but I mean, you saw what Alabama did, 62 to 7. LSU almost on par with that. I mean, it was 45-16, a little bit different, but LSU really took it to the Rebels in that game. Joe Burrow was 18 of 25 for 292 and 3 touchdowns. He also had 9 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown. Joe Burrow, he's exactly what LSU's been missing, it seems like, especially at the quarterback position. LSU, well, it looks like they're back to where they were before the last couple seasons where they just really fell off. I mean, they've still been winning football games, obviously, but now they are national title contenders. LSU is a good football team, but they get it done very easily over Ole Miss, 45 to 16. The next game, you had Kyler Murray. He didn't start for Oklahoma, but he ended up with 7 touchdowns in the game. They beat Baylor easy, 66 to 33. They scored 14 or more points in every quarter. Kyler Murray he was 17 of 21 for 432 and 6 touchdowns. He also ran for 1. Oklahoma just cruised, no problems there. They got the Red River Showdown this weekend with Texas. So we'll see a lot more about Oklahoma. We'll see a lot more about Texas because Texas lost to Maryland, but if Texas gets this win, they might be right back in the hunt to. I mean, who knows? It depends on how bad Maryland looks the rest of the season or how good Maryland looks the rest of the season for Texas' sake. But Oklahoma, very easy win over Baylor, 66-33. And a team that had everybody scratching their head 2 weeks ago really silenced a lot of people this week. Notre Dame, talking about Notre Dame, Stanford played. That was number 7 Stanford at number 8 Notre Dame. And Notre Dame just took it to the Cardinal. Just took it to him. Bryce Love did get hurt for Stanford in that game, but Notre Dame, that quarterback change, Ian Book, he was 24-33 for 278 and 4 touchdowns. They dominated. They just dominated Stanford. They were up 21-14 at the half, and then they were, excuse me, it was 24-17 after the third, and then Notre Dame really put it away. They shut out Stanford in the fourth quarter, and they scored 14 points to make the final score 38-17. Notre Dame's for real. Let me see who they got left here. They got at Virginia Tech, so that'll be a big game this weekend. And then after that, there's not really a whole lot that stands in their way from going undefeated and looking like they're going to the playoffs. They get past Virginia Tech this weekend. It's at Virginia Tech. So we'll see. But Notre Dame looking real good. They picked up the big win this weekend against Stanford. 38-17. Auburn, they had a 2.5-hour rain delay, and their offense is struggling. They beat Southern Miss 24-13, but they're really struggling right now on the offensive side. But Auburn, they still got the win in that football game. Another top 25 matchup, BYU, Washington. Washington just killed BYU. Shut them out until the fourth quarter. BYU finally put a touchdown on. Browning only missed 2 passes in the game. 23-25, 277, 1 touchdown. Huskies get it done at home, 35-7 over BYU. Had another high-scoring game in the Big 12. Big surprise. Uh, but you had West Virginia traveling to Texas Tech. They jumped out. They jumped out to a big lead early. Texas Tech fought back and were within one score, but West Virginia eventually did put them away, 42-34. The Mountaineers, Will Greer just keeps putting up numbers, 27 of 41, 370, and 3 touchdowns. West Virginia gets the win there on the road in Lubbock, Texas, 42-34. UCF, Pittsburgh's not very good. Obviously not very good. Um, they played UCF. UCF is a good football team, like I said last week. UCF beat Pittsburgh 45-14. No problems there on their home field. Mackenzie Milton was 18 of 34 for 328 and 4 touchdowns. And they just pick up the easy home win over the Pittsburgh Panthers. Michigan trailed this whole football game. Michigan lost this game, but they found a way to win. They found a way to win the game. That's all that matters. Michigan, they went to Northwestern, and they beat Northwestern 20-17 with a late score in that football game. They trailed the entire football game until the very final quarter. In the last few minutes, the last minute of the game, they scored that touchdown. There was less than a minute left. Shea Patterson was 15 of 24 for 196. It was really about Karan Higdon. He had 30 carries for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Michigan, that come from behind, they got the win. That's all that matters. That loss to Notre Dame, not looking so bad right now. So Michigan still got a chance. Michigan wins that East Division. Michigan, they're right back in it. They're right back in the playoff talk. But if it goes to the head-to-head between them and Notre Dame to decide who's getting in, Notre Dame wins that. But Michigan, very good position. They won. That's all that matters. Kentucky just looks better and better each week. They were up 24-3 at the half on the Gamecocks of South Carolina. They didn't score anything in the second half, but they only gave up 7 points in the second half. Their defense is legit. Benny Snell is legit. They're 5-0. They're ranked 13th in the country now after this past week. I mean, Terry Wilson, they're still struggling to throw the football. Terry Wilson was 13 of 20 for 132 and an interception. But they caused a bunch of turnovers in that football game. They caused Jake Bentley to throw 3 interceptions. And they're up 24-3. It was over at halftime, basically. Kentucky's for real at this point. I wouldn't say for real, like national title for real. We will see when they play Georgia. They also still have to play a couple other big games. They have to play at A&M this weekend, so we'll really find out a lot more about Kentucky because we know A&M's a pretty good football team. So they go to College Station this weekend. We saw how hard it was for Clemson there, so that'll kind of help us gauge how good Kentucky really is. They still have Vandy. Obviously, they still have UGA, but really, for Kentucky, their two biggest games left. They have A&M. They have to go to A&M, and they have UGA left. They still have to play Georgia on November 3rd. That Missouri game doesn't look like it'll be. That's not going to be an easy task for Kentucky there either. But Kentucky, they're looking good. It looks like Stoops finally got them up another level. Still, they need more passing game, but right now the defense is dominating, and Benny Snell, he's dominating, and that's all that they've needed so far. I really like how Kentucky's looked. Would like to see them have a better passing game if they're really gonna do something this year, or if they're really gonna put themselves in that spotlight to be an elite team this season. But that's the beauty about it. Each week, new game, new things happen. Kentucky's looking really good. Texas Longhorns, they found a way. They were up 19-0 at half on Kansas State, but Kansas State, they gave them a fit in the second half. The final was 19-14. Texas, they're 4-1. They got the big game this weekend against Oklahoma, but Texas, they won. That's all that matters. Like I said about Michigan, they won the football game. As long as they didn't lose, there's nothing wrong with that. They might have looked bad or whatever you want to say, but they got the job done. Texas 19-14 over Kansas State. Oregon, they traveled to Berkeley to take on the Cal Golden Bears, and they got it done relatively easy, 42-24. They're up 28-10 at the half. They never looked back. The final was 42-24. They tied each other in the second half, 14 points apiece. Herbert 16-22, 225, 2 touchdowns. Oregon's a good football team. They should be undefeated right now. They gave that game away against Stanford, but Oregon, they're still in the thick of it. They still have a chance. I mean, they still have a bunch of big games left. They lost an overtime game to Stanford. That's not a bad loss. The way they lost it was bad. But 4-1, ranked in the top 15. No, they only moved up one spot. They're ranked 18th this week. But Oregon gets the dub this past weekend, 42-24 over the Golden Bears. Michigan State, they were up 31-3 in this game against Central Michigan. They gave up 17 points in the fourth quarter, so the final is much closer than the game really was. It was 31-20, but Michigan State took care of Central Michigan 31-20. Duke gets ranked, immediately loses a football game. Virginia Tech went to Duke and really handled them for the most part. Duke was up after the first quarter. That was the last time they were winning. It was 17-7 at the half for Virginia Tech. The final score was 31-14 Virginia Tech. So Virginia Tech really got themselves back on track, because after last week that was terrible, very very bad. But Virginia Tech, they got the job done. Go to Duke, knock off the Blue Devils 31-14 in that football game. And the last game of the top 25 teams that played this weekend was Florida and Mississippi State. Dan Mullen's return to Mississippi State. It was 6-3 State at the half. And the second half was all Florida Gators. The Gators ended up winning 13-6. They scored 10 points in the second half and shut out Mississippi State. So Mississippi State fails to get their revenge, as you could say, against Mississippi State in that game. There's a dog barking. I apologize. But no, Florida, they went into Starkville, took care of business against Dan Mullen's former team. Mississippi State's looking really, really bad. They look really, really, really bad. Fitzgerald was 11-26 for 98 yards. That was really it for the most part. Felipe Franks, he was 22-31 for 219 and an interception. The only touchdown was on a trick play from Florida. A wide receiver threw a pass for a touchdown. But that was really it. That was basically all the scoring in that game. It was a bunch of field goals and one touchdown that came from the Florida Gators in that football game. But that is it for the top 25 games of this past week. Let me know what you saw, what you're thinking now. Headed into week 6, halfway through the season almost. I mean, I know we have bye weeks, but most teams will be halfway through their season at this point, playing their 6th game this upcoming weekend. Let me know what you think down in the comments. But if you enjoyed, give a big thumbs up, like the video, share the content, and subscribe to the channel. But like I always say, highly appreciated. But this has been Spittin' Sports with Lamar. I am Casey Lamar. I'll see you in the next video.